All right. Tell us when we're live, Nadine. I think we might be. Fantastic. Okay.
Oh,
welcome.
there we go.
Good, we're in. Okay, welcome. Fantastic. Oh, Nadine, might have to. Might be. Sorry, if anyone's got the window open, might have to close it down. Sorry, hang on a second. That might have been me. All of the beautiful tech little gremlins that crawl in here. So welcome. We're in the roundtable discussion where women are raising their voices and using their stories to heal trauma, and not only that, but to re-story themselves. So before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the land upon which I sit today, which is Wilyakalli country. And I really encourage you to take a moment to just breathe into an acknowledgement in yourself wherever you are as to the land that we're blessed to be part of. Yeah, over this great planet. I also want to invite you into the space today. We're going to shortly introduce these beautiful authors that I'm very privileged to be working with in this book, Unapologetic, and in these roundtable discussions, where we're all feeling are very powerful. And the way into this space today, I'd like to enter through story. So one of my favorite authors is Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And the reason I'm going to share just a short story with you is because something happens when we go into the story landscape. Something happens where we drop in to kind of more of the depths of what happens metaphorically, mythically, in our being in ways that only story can necessarily speak to. So just allow yourself to drop in as we listen to Laloba. There is an old woman who lives in a hidden place that everyone knows but few have ever seen. As in the fairy tales of Eastern Europe, she seems to wait for lost or wandering people and seekers to come to her place. She is circumspect, often hairy, always fat, and especially wishes to evade most company. She is both a crower and a cackler, generally having more animal sounds than human ones. They say she lives among the rotten granite slopes in the Tarahumara Indian Territory. They say she is buried outside Phoenix near a well. She is said to have been seen travelling south to Mount Alban in a burnt-out car with the back window shot out. She is said to stand by the highway near El Paso or ride shotgun with truckers to Morelia, Mexico, or that she has been sighted walking to market with strangely formed boughs of firewood on her back. She is called by many names: La Jusera, bone woman, La Trapera, the gatherer, and La Loba, wolf woman. The sole work of La Loba is the collecting of bones. She is known to collect and preserve, especially that which is in danger of being lost to the world. Her cave is filled with the bones of all manner of desert creatures: the deer, the rattlesnake, the crow, but her speciality is said to be wolves. She creeps and crawls and sifts through the montanas, mountains, and the arroyas, the dry riverbeds, looking for wolf bones. And when she has assembled an entire skeleton, when the last bone is in place and the beautiful white sculpture of the creature is laid out before her, she sits by the fire and thinks about what song she will sing. And when she is sure, she stands over the creatura, raises her arms over it and sings out. That is when the rib bones and the leg bones of the wolf begin to flesh out and the creature becomes fur. The loba sings some more and more of the creature comes into being. Its tail curls upward, shaggy and strong. And the loba sings more and the wolf creature begins to breathe. And still the loba sings so deeply that the floor of the desert shakes. And as she sings, the wolf opens its eyes, leaps up and runs away down the canyon. Somewhere in its running, whether by the speed of its running or by splashing its way into a river or by way of a ray of sunlight or moonlight hitting it right in the side. The wolf is suddenly transformed into a laughing woman who runs free toward the horizon. So it is said that if you wander the desert and it is near sundown and you are perhaps a little bit lost and certainly tired, that you are lucky, for the Loba may take a liking to you and show you something of the soul. I have goosebumps every time I read this story, and it speaks to me of what I've seen happen in my own life and in the lives of these women as they've gone and reclaimed the bones of the being, of the parts of themselves, perhaps affected by trauma intergenerationally or within their own lives. And they have then found the song. They have found whatever expression they've needed to reweave their beings. So with that beautiful flavor buoying us up, thanks to our dear mentor, Clarissa, I would love to introduce these beautiful women. I did have Tash down, who should be joining us, and I'll give you her rundown. Tash Ashwin is CEO and founder of Ashwin Publishing and business alchemist for soulful entrepreneurs. She's currently getting her bubs to sleep because she's magically juggling entrepreneurship and motherhood like many of us do. We have Nadine Keller. Would you like to raise your hand, Nadine? Somatic therapist and ordained priestess, co-founder of her Holy Temple, a mystery school for women. We have Penny Hawkins, authorized civil celebrant and creator and facilitator of Journey Home to Soul program and workshops. We have Virginia Sharda York, who is a leadership alchemist, working globally with movement and transformation in business leadership, coaching, somatic and dance movement therapies, and a mix of creative and embodiment practices. She helps catalyze and focus individuals and companies in their healing and transformation journeys. And I'm Naomi Weil. I'm a visionary artist, a psychotherapist, shamanic practitioner, many things. I actually forgot to put my own bio on my sheet that I was reading. But in the end, I'm just me, and I'm showing up. And I'm very grateful to be facilitating this roundtable. So with that in mind, I actually would like to do just a quick drop-in exercise with you all where we connect with our own story, I guess, our own bones that we're reclaiming, our own song. So I invite you all to just get comfortable in a seat, close down the eyes. You might like to place a hand on your heart, on your belly, on your throat, somewhere that feels good. Taking a deep, long inhalation into the body, noticing the sensations of breath as it moves into your lungs, through your throat, your nostrils. Just tuning your awareness into what it means to breathe and be in contact, in relationship with the outside world through this breath that nurtures you, that cleanses you, that revitalizes you. And as you breathe into this vessel that is your story, every moment of your story and those that have come before you, in all of your cells, just welcoming everything that is here today. Breathing into whatever you find when you drop in, whether that be uncomfortable things or joyous things, whether that be pain or pleasure. We just welcome everything here now. This is me. I am here for me. And as you breathe, just being aware that this welcome invites any of the parts of you, the bones that may have been misplaced or cut off or rejected. It invites them home to this safe place that you're creating in your body. And as we check in with what we carry today, I invite you to hold a space of curiosity about the stories we have over these bones, and a curiosity about how we might find a new way, a new song to re-story, to restore. Breathing that through your being, feeling the earth beneath you, whether that's through the building that you're in, the chair that you're upon, the cushion. Breathing into your own sweet heart that has brought you here. Gratitude. Gratitude for it all. And when you're ready, blinking open your eyes and coming back into this space that is seen and heard. Wonderful. Okay, so I'm super excited. This book, that is now obviously an international bestseller. And I just want to note that the fact that it is an international bestseller to me is important purely because it means that women all over the world are joining us in reading these stories. And not just, it really, people I've spoken to already have been saying that in the purchase of the book even, it's been a gift to them of permission. Even in the reading of the stories, it's a gift to them of permission. And so it feels really powerful to be sitting with some amazing women who are doing the work. And I'd love to explore some of that, because I think that the book itself is a really good example of what we're doing in creating action, what we're doing in restoring. And it speaks really clearly of women who have used a restoring technique, I guess it's a technique, to move through stuff in their lives that they've actually reclaimed, have restored. So just before we get going, I want to just honor the fact that the restoring word came to me through a good friend and doctoral candidate, Fee Mosley. And she's doing work with restoring women's longing and belonging through storying. And she termed as far as I know, she really, put meaning to the phrase restoring. She does a lot of work on myth-based stories and personal stories that create belonging. And I feel like that's what we're doing as well here together today. So I'd like to open up with the first point of discussion. And feel free to jump in, ladies, as to who feels called as you do. How has the process of writing your story and sharing it publicly in the Unapologetic book affected you? Anyone?
I can talk to it.
Great.
Well, I think I hold this story in my head, like we do, that my story is kind of ordinary and not as vivacious or traumatic, you could say, or dramatic as other people's. And maybe on some level that's true. But my experience in writing the story, this is my third time I've been in a multi-author book in a year, and that's been a lot. So it's rich, a big experience. But one of the stories that I share is about my that I have a very strong connection to Delphi in Greece. And so for me, it's a very private story. And particularly because I'm aware as a coach, therapist, not particularly telling my personal stories to my clients, that it's really tied up with the spiritual aspect of my life, which I also write about, just opening some space around spiritual experience and intelligence. And so I'm really aware how vulnerable I feel, that, it's a bit woo-woo, out there. Not to me, it's embodied, it's deep, it's past life resonant, it's, encapsulated at a, advancing into life maturation process to really own this past life link, and also the impact of really that being the final tip over for me of being happy to talk about spirituality more and more in the corporate world where I work, part of the time, a lot of the time, but not all of the time. And so it's kind of linking a part of myself in this, feels very precious story. And I even sort of disparage a little, maybe it's a little bit apologetic in an unapologetic book, to go, look, this is my experience. And if it's not yours, that's okay. Please don't judge me and I won't judge you. So I think there's something in that freedom to feel we have to give permission to ourselves to be brave enough to tell the stories, take the courage for whatever other people think, but it's kind of their business what they think. But for me, the telling of it kind of seems to have amped up even how important this is, both in my personal life, my practice of my work. So it's deepening, accelerating, and clearing. So that's part of the healing. And I think in one of the roundtables yesterday, we were talking about really all traumas intergenerational, and for all women, there's stories of our priestessing, healing work, our domination in the patriarchy, you know, the movement that we're in as ascending energy here. So yeah, it's been really strong now that I think about it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, ladies. Nadine?
Sure, yes. Okay, I'm unmuted. Yes, well, I so resonated with everything you just said, Virginia. Um, in the telling of my story, I think what's come up for me is again just this a layer of fear of what family is going to judge about, essentially, right? So that's been a big thing for me, which, you know, it's a lot to get over. You know, it's a lot to get over. Yay, our beloved Tosh is here. um, and it's just been such an incredible process. And, you know, in this process, I keep remembering over the last, like, you know, 20 years really of my work of how younger women have always come to me like wanting to know me. You know, and it was problematic when it was just in the role of psychotherapy, you know, psychotherapist. But when I started to expand my work a little bit more, I was like, oh, wow, there is really something here about being able to connect with women in different generations and telling our stories. So that's something I'm very interested in now, because I feel that every generation is a little bit lost, you know, especially some of the older generations when there wasn't as much openness, you know, from parents to children, grandparents to children. There was more of this like, oh, you know, controlling, trying to think we can, you know, mold our children. So that's really what this has opened up for me in a deeper way of how important it is to really share our stories as women, as human beings, with others, because we might have the exact gift they need for their journey. Um, you know, and yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you, Naomi, for your opening, because there's I call her the sea witch in our community, a woman who's a rock collector who lives, you know, she's a homeless woman who lives on the sea, right in the harbor, right in the center of everything, right? She's been there since I've lived here, and she has her big home and everything. And you know, she always gives me these oracles when I walk by. I'll walk by and she'll give me a rock and say something to me. So in a way, yeah, I was just weeping hearing your story or hearing you read that. Like I feel like she's this reminder for me archetypally of who I'm becoming. And I take her wisdom, you know, as I'm passing it down to the women in my life as I tell my stories. So that's all I have to say. It was a little bit not formulated, but I was deeply touched. So
thank you.
Yeah,
no, that's great. Thanks.
I resonate with everything that each of you have shared. For me, being part of this book, initially for me, it was, telling my story for the first time. There's a lot of elements of my story that many people in my life don't know. So for me, that was where my fear was coming from. That was where my, stepping in and stepping up came into play. But what I've realized, particularly over the last 3 days, and because of the various roundtables and the connections with the authors and the responses from people as, the book's getting out there, the thing that's really sitting alive with me at the moment, which makes me really proud to have been part of this and to have been brave enough to share my story, has been the wisdom that's gained from listening to others, the wisdom that's gained from others sharing their unique aspects of themselves and the journey that they've actually been on, the power that is in that, and how often we receive medicine, we give it and we receive it in ways that are just so subtle, but are so powerful. And I'm really feeling the importance of story, the importance of sharing. And I know from my own experience, and I'm seeing it now, it's like I feel like being part of this book is giving me deeper layers of understanding, and it's like the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. It was much more than what I thought it was about me being brave enough and me becoming a published author, which was a lifelong goal. There's so much more to that, and what's coming out of that, and what I can then offer, and what I already do that I wasn't seeing, just by sharing my story. That's been probably my gold, I think, in this whole experience.
Beautiful. Thanks, Penny. So Tash, I'll just give you the question again. It was, how has the process of writing your story and sharing it publicly in Unapologetic affected you? And I guess it's slightly different for you in that you're also the publisher of this book. So it'd be interesting to hear from you in that space. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. I apologize, I'm late. I've been trying to get my 1-year-old to sleep for a nap. So juggling all the things at the moment. It's been a really big weekend. Story, yeah, the more I immerse myself in the world of storytelling, the world of writing, publishing, and really bringing women together, that's my favorite part of this process, is the power that happens when women come together to share their story, but also the individual experiences and transformations. There's so much there, I really see this as a very sacred process. And the more, this is the third book I've published now, and I'm only really grasping it now. I thought I grasped it after my first experience writing in a co-authored book, which was 7 books ago. But actually, there's so much to the process, the alchemy that happens, that I'm only really grasping it now. And I'm only really beginning to grasp it, I think. There's so much there for me. And so for me, I know I'll speak to another. I wrote a chapter in a book that was launched last year. This, in Unapologetic, I wrote the introduction. But in a book that I wrote last year, I really shared the most bravest, scary, moment of my life, bathroom floor moment, the moment that the story that I didn't want anyone to know, because I was worried that if I shared this, I would lose credibility, that I would lose face, that people wouldn't want to be around me or work with me, right? But I knew it was that story that I had to share. And so it's actually been through that personal experience that I tell all my authors, and you guys heard this as well, be brave enough to share your scariest stories, because they're the ones that hold you hostage. And it's in the actual releasing and the writing, the moving through the emotion and the catharsis that happens when we write and share and publish these brave but scary stories, that we actually unhook ourselves from them. We really do. We can unhook ourselves from so much. It's so powerful. I don't have words really for how powerful it is, as you can hear. So my experience has been, really being able to step into a deeper level of confidence within my journey and within myself. And really recognizing that, my life has guided me up into this point right here, right now, and everything that's happened, positive, negative, traumatic, non-traumatic, has informed the work that I now do with my people and who I am as a woman, as a mother, as a business strategist, as a publisher, as all of the different roles that I play. And so, yeah, I really believe the power of storytelling to heal, it cannot be underestimated.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely beautiful. And it does just have this, listening to you all, there's this piece that's around transformation. Yeah, there's this piece around the fact that something has shifted in your worldview as you've gone through this process. And to me, that probably is one of the most powerful pieces of this, you know, of any kind of creative expression as well, in any format, is that it has the power to transform us. And I guess for me, it's been, you know, I've done a lot of restoring for many years, actually. I've been really looking at, it's kind of been one of my processes, is really looking at what are my stories? What are the things I say to people when they ask me how I am? You know, and starting to listen into those and go, hang on, there's a theme here. and starting to have some curiosity and weighing things up. And we don't always even realize the mantras we're living by, and yet we're speaking them into the world all the time. So I guess for me, the process of it, which I did find quite transformational, was to start really unifying what was happening within me and what was happening in my public world. And I had, that's also been a journey that's been going on for a long time, but really unifying the parts of me so that I could stand in my story in front of anyone and not take responsibility for their response or their reaction. And that's given me permission to undertake more. You know, I'm thinking of other creative projects now and other things that I've always felt burning, but have been like given more and more permission to kind of feel like something's cracking open. And even just as far as like the effects of the process of penning my life in that way, I had to really face some things that I kind of thought were like dealt with, safely tucked away. And it was like, you know, I was being invited to readdress and make sure that it was felt like a real clearing out. I think, you know, so you was talking about they unhook you, Tash. You know, it's like, it's a clearing out of anything. And as I did the process of the book, even though a lot of my story isn't, like our stories are huge, right? These are just little snapshots. I was invited to clear a whole lot of trauma out of my body over the last 6 months that had actually stopped me from really sharing some of my places with some of my people. Yeah, so profound. Hey, profound. Thank you. So I'd like to, you know, then move into the ideas around examples of how we've restored. And, you know, again, you know, I really want to explore this idea of restoring, being kind of like a changing of lens, you know, a changing of perspective, evaluating of beliefs, a way of reframing sometimes, but I feel like it's deeper than just reframing, because restore doesn't just mean I change the label. It means I go in there and I really face some of the stuff that I've been carrying in my life, either that's mine or that's from the generations before me. And I have an opportunity then to create a whole new way. So in that sense, you know, speaking to how has it healed trauma in your life, restoring. Anyone's welcome to begin.
Oh, no, you go, Tash.
Okay, I'll jump in quickly because some of the most powerful work I've done with a coach was around, I think it's called EAP. It's a man developed it up in the Sunshine Coast, and it's all around uncovering your number one story that has informed your life from the beginning. And that process was incredibly powerful. And so it's typically a sentence. You nail it down to one sentence. So if I remember it correctly, the sentence that was my story went something along the lines of, in order to avoid judgment, abandonment, and betrayal, I dimmed my light so as not to be so powerful or so bright, something like that. I dimmed my light so that I could shrink away and avoid all of that. And to get to that one sentence was about 4 months worth of, it was a 4-month process of excavating and understanding and shining the light. And when I remember when we finally, and then the whole session around actually formulating that sentence. And when we finally hit the nail on the head, I remember my coach, Rosie, at the time, she said, you will feel it in your body when we hit the nail on the head, when we really find your story and articulate it in the most powerful of ways. And we found it, and it was like, oh, goosebumps. And just, it was like an incredibly powerful moment. You know, I really felt like, okay, this makes so much sense. And I could see everything start to come together, and, oh, that happened and led to that. And look where that led me. But the whole process was about understanding the gold and uncovering the gold within that journey, within that story. So now I can see, even in my introduction, I wrote about a moment in time on the playground when I was 10 years old. And you know, my big bright hair had me stood right out, you know, and in there, in order to avoid judgment and abandonment and betrayal, I dimmed my light. And everything has kind of been reflective of that up until I had this awareness. And I can still see it now. Whenever I go back into story, it's generally something in relation to those aspects that's being triggered. So I can see it now, and I can unhook from it usually very quickly. And if not, then I know there's more for me to process and excavate. But just so powerful to really understand and to see from that bigger picture, you know, this is maybe in this lifetime, this is what I'm here to heal or to integrate or to learn or to understand.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Tash.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that idea. I think I heard you just say, Tash. I pulled out a few quotes from women about the function of story in the world, because there's so much about story, but here was one about smallness. Jean Houston, a great goddess teacher, wisdom holder still. If you keep telling the same sad, small story, you'll keep living the same sad, small life. And ain't that true? And so sitting, listening to all of us so far, I've been thinking about, you know, there's our trauma story, and there's kind of what we identify with, the story of how I ain't big enough, good enough, right enough, whatever. But I think there's also some other functions in storytelling, like telling the joyful stories and telling the stories that are big and maybe we think we have to reduce even, you know, it's like there's this light and dark. So I was thinking about reframing, because I work as a coach, and we do reframe a lot for client, you know, in a coaching session. And I was thinking maybe reframing is like how we all reframe for the audience or for someone else. Where story, when you really tell a story, even a tinsy wincy little story, it's yours and it's about you. And so there's something that your connection to your story is what you give out into the world. And there you are, just brave and vulnerable with it. So I'm really into storytelling also to encourage and to be magical, like that story that you read, I'm guessing from Clarissa's great book, Naomi, you know, like I'm going, I know this story, and don't we all? So there's the ancient stories as well. And I feel like now I'm getting old enough to be, oh, holy moly, I turned into an elder or something, you know, wow, 61, how can this be happening, you know? And so I've got more stories now. And so I'm feeling the power of story. You know, if I told you the story about that second honeymoon, if I told you the story about what happened when I was at Delphi, have I told you the story about this amazing woman that came into my life, just like that at the beach, like your California lady. So I love the function of the healing, but I also love the function of the empowering. And so I just kind of wanted to open up. There's, you know, what do stories do in our world? All societies have told stories. And so we've got this Amazon just in time print thing, you know, immediacy. But I actually still really love sitting around with a cup of tea or a fire and just telling stories. So just one last thing to say, a thing that I love doing, it's a process that I've trained as a leader in, but it's called interplay. And in interplay, we talk about information in our world. We're in this we're taking in, we're Googling, we're Facebooking, we're being information coming in. So they have this beautiful term, which I really honor in the two pioneers that made up interplay. We call it X-formation. So we want to get our stories out. So whether it's in voice or toning or art or dance or stories on pages or screens, X-formation. So I just wanted to throw that in because it's expression. Like exit is out, getting these stories out. I think when we sat around fireplaces and, you know, made food the slow way, we got more storytelling out. So I really want to kind of point to the ancestral line of women and men telling their stories in society. So I think it's very honourable. And like Tash, I too am, you know, starting publishing work and more authoring, because I'm kind of getting to the point in my life where I go, I got to get some of these stories out, or they go to the grave with me. And I think some of them are useful. So we're in a lineage here. And I guess to all our ancestors and all our societies of ancestry and all our past lives, I'd like to honour, just at this moment, all the people listening, all the stories that we carry from our lineages, you know?
Oh, Virginia. Let's take a moment to actually take that all in. That's so much gold. And a beautiful, yeah. I think the key for me from what you were just saying in relation to the journey I've had is, the restoring to not be sitting in that trauma and to share the wisdom that comes out of that trauma. And I know for me, a lot of, I was very much in my story. This has happened to me, this has happened to me, this has happened to me, and this has happened to me. And my physical body reacted to being trapped in that story. My mental state was trapped in that story. My spiritual side was absolutely trapped in that story. So I shut down all of that because I was so absorbed in my story. And I believed my story was who I actually was. So for me, the gift in storytelling started with me. It started with me actually looking at those stories in so much depth, not to re-traumatize, not to re-trigger, but to understand, to gain insight into it so that I could work with it to remove what it was doing to me, how it was keeping me small, how it was keeping me quiet, how I was afraid, how I didn't want to share. So in looking at my stories, I was able to remove the trauma from me. And I talk about it from an energetic imprint perspective, because through my journey, I really realized that it's not just the mind stuff that we do to each other, but it's actually the physicality and the impact it has on us within our physical body. So I very much looked at all of that and picked it all apart and did the deep dives and did the, you know, I know, Naomi, you talk about, you know, that moment, those moments of not wanting to be here anymore. It's all difficult. You don't put it like that necessarily, but, you know, that moment of falling down the stairs. And for me, you know, I had some really big crash and burns. But in looking at all of that and understanding how I was falsely identifying it and making my story who I was, and how people were relating to me as, well, that's her story, so that's who she is. And I reached a crisis point 4 years ago because of a massive life event that I was forced to look at who I was. And that's where my restoring began. That's where I started to really change. Well, actually, you know what? No, I'm not who you think I am. But I actually didn't know who I was. So I was forced to really look very, very deep and to discard those stories. And in restoring and creating and understanding it, who I was, that's where the courage to share my story, the realization of the wisdom that it contains. And for me personally, the reason why I do the work that I do in Journey Home to Soul is because I've realized just how many of us walk around believing that we are something we're not. And when you find who you really are, what you can offer to others in storytelling is so powerful. And that's my passion now. You know, it's been the greatest gift to me, and that's what I want to be able to offer to others. And that's what each of you are sitting here doing as well.
Beautiful. Oh, Penny, such lovely sharing, ladies. Just such a powerful thing, isn't it? To even be sitting around a table together here now, metaphorically, and sharing. You know, this weaves together a new way. Yeah. Nadine, did you want to comment?
Yes. First of all, I'm just so struck by all of your sharing. Thank you. And it reminds me of, there was a moment I had, towards the end of our graduate school, my graduate school, where I remember telling a story, about some trauma that I had, right? And suddenly I was just telling it with no emotion and nothing. And I was like, oh, it's cleared. It's gone. I had, you know what I mean? I had like shared it enough, or I had really processed it out of my body. And so it was like I realized this alchemical transformation happened by sharing it. And so it was interesting in this journey with unapologetic, there was some family crises and an illness, and I so easily could have made that the reason not to tell my story, which I wanted to. And thank you, Tarsh, for for your lovely presence, which kept me going. And as I began to share more and more, I realized how many stories I had. So it was quite a process. But in that narrowing it down, I started to bring in all of the gems. So suddenly I realized this was this alchemical transformation. I was like narrowing it down. I'm sure I'll write books one day, but I was like, oh wow, yes, that happened. But here's the gems I took from it. Here's the gems I took from it. And I don't think that would have happened had I not done this process. So it was really and is transformative, because it's like I was recreating, restoring my life, on the pen, onto the paper. And I'm like, wait, I'm recalling all aspects of myself, my gifts, my journey in this really profound, transformative way. So I was healing myself in this beautiful way. So beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it? It's an act of love. It's an act of absolute like self-respect and really taking ownership, taking personal ownership. I know in my own way, I guess everything that I do, everything that I have done for a long time in very many forms of visual and performing arts, or other kinds of modalities like the shamanic practice or the yoga I teach, or meditation, or therapeutic modalities or mentorship. It's all essentially about a dialogue, which is the storying, yeah. And what stories are we going to look at, and what stories are we going to kind of pick apart? And I think for me, in kind of speaking to that, I think I woke up in different ways at different points in my life within a story that I found unsafe or harmful, or felt even like I kind of had positioned myself at the mercy of someone else's really broken story. And it just, I guess the biggest learning I've had with that, particularly around some of the hardest parts of our stories, two things. One of them is that I've had to learn to really just witness and not be in, like kind of be able to breathe it onto the page, even just journaling or draw it, or somehow kind of create a witness state so I can look at it with a little bit of perspective and be quite objective about what can I learn here? What is this here to show me? And quite often in that process, then I also see the places that the damaged ones, the part of me that was abused, or the part of me that really abused myself, even like in kind of disowning or numbing or any of the things that I was doing to try and cope and be safe. A little bit like what you were saying, Tash, around, finding your own story. Like one of my probably lines has been, I'm unsafe in the world, so how do I feel safe? and having to kind of really find those parts of me and call them home and restory them by giving them what they didn't have. So, reparent my child, that beautiful young one who was given so many reasons not to feel safe. And actually, it's interesting to be able to look at it now as well and go, I'm actually really, really grateful that I had a lot of persecution in my life, because I had to learn to fight to be me. And that has given me such courage and fire. And now I just wouldn't even hesitate, but I had to learn that. And it's not something that necessarily comes easily. And there's also grace that needs to be learned alongside it. Like when I was younger and I was kind of trying to move through my trauma and was kind of halfway to where I am now, I guess. But I had a real like, just fuck the world kind of thing. It's just like, if you don't like me, too bad. But that didn't really always, work out for me. So it's that thing of like, how do I graciously also recall those pieces and reunify and listen to the body and find, what am I holding? Even in yoga practices, like, where am I storing some of my trauma still? And it will continue to move through me. I think this is the important thing. It's not an end game point that we're going to reach. It's this whole, I've learned a process. Yeah. And like what you were just saying, Nadine, made me think of like that whole process is an act of love to me, the beloved, and God within me. And then that ripples out into the world and into my relationships. And that sharing stories, making ourselves vulnerable, the vulnerability is probably the hardest part. And yet one of my teachers really made it quite clear to me and tangible that shame is the only thing we can't heal on our own, because shame got in there with rejection from other, shame, like, yes, we reject ourselves, but shame kind of comes in through connection and through a lack of belonging and something that we essentially need. So in the sharing and finding the safe space for sharing, I feel like that's just so healing, isn't it? To be seen, to have someone see you in your worst moment or in your worst story, or one you've at least labeled as worst, and still love you. Yeah, powerful stuff.
To share something that's present for me at the moment. And so my grandfather turns 85 soon, and he was a Vietnam vet. And I always knew that he lived through some pretty bad stuff, but he never spoke about it. It was like, can't go there. And I remember once, I might have been 21, 22, and it was Christmas, and I positioned myself next to him at the dinner table, and I poured him lots of wines, and I waited until, anyway, I did it when I was young, but I waited until he was ripe enough, and I started asking him about his time, right? I kind of was pretty, anyway, he has recently finished his 500-page manuscript of his life. And I know that the journey that he's gone through to write his life story, and the process of actually confronting all of these things that for so long he couldn't even speak about, and the shame that he experienced when coming back from Vietnam, and, the rejection amongst so many of the vets here. And I was speaking with him recently, and he asked me if I would consider publishing it. And of course I said, yes, I would love to, but I could really see the profound journey that he had been through himself when it comes to actually penning one's story. I just wanted to share that because it's really powerful, really, really powerful.
Yeah, thanks, Tash. It is really powerful, isn't it? To be seen in your story. And then the process of what you have to do within yourself to kind of consolidate so that you can actually step forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge. That piece alone. Massive.
Yeah.
I want to speak just, in line with that idea of witness. So you're part of therapy or coaching or being in this group, like we're witnessing, even in reading each other's stories. So that witness is the eye of the other, and how healing that is, that somebody knows. So I've got another female writer quote, Ursula Le Guin, one of my beloveds. Story is our nearest and dearest way of understanding our lives and finding a way onwards, which sounds very simple, but I think it is this needing the meaning making that story is. And another idea that I experienced in this book in particular, but I've noticed in each book I've written in, is I wanted to point to the idea of layers. We come back and we visit again. So I thought, I've done so much therapy at the end of my marriage, I've worked through, it's all processed, it's all healed. Then I start to write and I go, oh no, there's more here. I'm going the next level. I call it like archaeology, going deeper into the story of the life you've had, but deeper into the meaning making. And I'm here to say, that goes on, it gets deeper and deeper. So at 85 or at 61 or 42, we're digging deeper and making more meaning. And I think that's such a richness for each of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do a lot of work with the theories of Carl Jung, and he talks about the symbology, and meaning making, and the fact that we need to be able to start to understand the symbols in our stories. And quite often the symbols are more powerful than everything else that's around it, and being able to like have those as kind of like signposts on the road, on the path before you. Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? And in that way, actually, I feel like restoring can be quite intentional. So it's not just like, okay, what do I do with what I've got here? That's kind of like, I've put my guts out on the table and I'm sifting through them, and what can I make of this? But like, can I intentionally weave some of the power of, eagle in here? Can I intentionally, tune into some of my mentors or the magic I see in the world and align myself with that too? I feel like we can co-create a story. And that leads me into my, my next query for you, beautiful women, to speak to around how are we, co-creating through storytelling and through this restoring in changing the world? Like, how do you see women bringing yourselves and other women, bringing their stories forward and creating change? And you may even like to speak to how, tips for people, like what would you suggest even people do so that they continue being part of that co-creation?
I'd love to just very briefly address that, because for me, the co-creation is happening in my life with the people that is in it. So not from a professional perspective. I don't want to talk about it from that angle. I'm talking about it from just with the people that are around me, by sharing, by actually silently witnessing. So allowing the people in my life to share what's alive for them allowing that for me. And I have a number of female friends and male friends, actually, not just females, where there's this dialogue of exchange using technology. So therefore, it's just that silent witnessing. It's not the listening to respond. It's actually listening. And in us sharing our stories and doing that silent witnessing, where what I'm seeing come out is people increase, we're all increasing our vulnerability. We're increasing our confidence, and we're overcoming some of the fears and the things that hold us back. And so for me, the most beautiful thing and the co-creation is actually happening through storytelling at a personal level. And people, particularly one beautiful friend that I've known for about 18 months, and she's a completely different person to what she was then to what she is now. And she's reflected to me on Friday that she thanked me for sharing my story because of what she's gained from it. And that's beautiful. But what she's doing by me having that courage is she's actually changing her story and understanding what that story is for her. And so for me, the co-creation on a personal level has come really powerfully through by sharing at that personal level the stories that we each carry around. And I know how much I've actually learnt by my friends that are willing to do that, and then there's the professional capacity, which I don't feel drawn to talk to at the moment, but it's the personal for me, the restoring and the storytelling. Hopefully that answers your question. I've kind of gone on a bit of a tangent maybe with that, but that's the beauty that I've seen through, and the co-creation that I've seen is that all of us are supporting each other to be willing to share and to speak and to learn, and the wisdom gained.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, as we were saying earlier, you know, it gives permission. It kind of, you don't know what you don't know. And then you see someone over there, you know, it's really interesting in one of the chats that I'm in at the moment who have discovered our book, which is wonderful. And they've already been reading it. And they started talking about yoni massage and, you know, and they've never heard of it before. So you don't know what you don't know. And so this story is like this beautiful kind of invitations into other worlds or invitations into other perspectives. Yeah, absolutely. Permission and you know, solidarity of like, oh, we're doing this. We're all actually doing the same thing. I had a woman write to me and say, oh, I've just been in admiration of you forever. And I've always felt when I've come to, you know, workshops or ceremonies or things that you've done that, you know, I kind of put you on a pedestal. And that reading your story makes me realize that it's accessible, that, you know, you're actually just on the path, just like me. I think that's a really powerful thing, isn't it? Like you're saying, Penny, it's like together there's this witnessing of humanness. Yeah.
I must be in quote mode today. Anais Nin, I adore. Who doesn't? If you don't know Anais. Actually, I just watched a documentary after 20, 30 years of loving her. It's Anna Is. It's French. Not, I was there Anais, so it's Anna Is. Anna, like French. Anna Is Nin. And the time came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more powerful than the risk it took to blossom. Yeah, we all know that one. But I think we've all done this risk in the book. And so, you know, one thing is to encourage other women to be in the books. These are a good starting place for showing up. But I also think part of it's a time to answer your question. I think this is women's voice time is what I feel. And when I finished uni, I actually did a major in TV and wanted to do documentaries on women in the world, like women are half the world and how come all the news is all about what the guys are doing. And I find myself all these years later, like career number 1, career number 2 and career number 3 going, I think it's kind of women's time, not to dominate, but to balance, to harmonize male and female lineages and energies and stories. So I think it's a really important time on the planet. That's my intuitive feeling, that women's stories need to take more space at this time on the planet. I think we have very valuable stories, you know, and it's been a long time that women have been telling them, but now's a good time to use the technology and the time and the era to speak into them more. So that's part of why I feel in it. And okay, last quote, Clarissa, I hope you will go out and let stories, that is life, happen to you, and you will work with these stories, water them with your blood and tears and your laughter till they bloom, till you yourself burst into bloom. So I think that being willing to bloom, you mentioned it, Naomi, in her story about, you know, the woman in the story also decides on a song to sing, you know, something that's healing or something that's got joy or something that needs to come out on the planet. And women bring beautiful joy and peace and harmony and, you know, recovery into the planet. And if any time on the planet, don't get me started, I think, do we need that women's voice and touch and healing? So yes, the books are part of this, all our work, all our artwork and all our storytelling amongst each other, you know, like I feel like from these roundtables, this is the last that I've been in, I think 2 or 3. And I'm like, oh, could we keep just doing this? Could we just keep chatting with each other on topics all around the planet? And if other women want to join in, I don't care if they're authors or not, because it's something about that forum of women witnessing our stories constantly that, you know, it's an encouraging time to balance. But yeah, I've sat in many circles with men in story and I really honour both. I just think we've got to probably turn the volume up a bit and just celebrate that as women, and it's okay, you know. So women publishers, yay. Women TV channel owners, yay. Women media magnets, yeah, you know, but in the new earth, please.
Yes. Beautiful.
Yeah,
Tash, Nadine.
Yeah.
Yep.
On the eve of the book being published on Thursday night, I did a little personal channeling ritual, which I like to do to keep in touch with, you know, my people upstairs. And I actually had 11 generations of women come through, like bang down. It was incredibly powerful. And it was like just this incredible excitement. And it was more than excitement. It was, I cannot put words to it. But I was very present to, you know, thinking about how different our lives are now as women as they were for our grandmothers and great-grandmothers and great-great-great-great-great-great-grandmothers, you know, and the stories that we tell now about ourselves and the possibilities and the world and our own mythos being so different to the stories that were told for our women ancestors. And the possibilities that we have, the responsibilities that we have to use this incredible freedom that we are bestowed upon in this generation, in this time. I was really just pretty floored by the message that I received, that we have such responsibilities to use what we have wisely, you know, the sovereignty that we have as women, that we can create something from nothing. All of us are entrepreneurs, healers, space holders, and we literally create something from nothing, as we do as women when we birth babies and, you know, and grow ideas and concepts and gestate. But I think for me, in terms of storytelling and storytelling being something that heals, it's like when we really take it upon ourselves, as we share our story, as we heal our story, what I understood on Thursday night was we heal it for our ancestors at the same time.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Oh, I've just got goosebumps,
Me
like
too.
radiating down my body. Yeah, amazing. Thank you, Tash.
My guess is that those ancestors are present too, and I think we women are comfortable with the visible and the invisible realms. So the invisible and the visible realms. So just a little story that, you know, I'll stay with the tears. I found during the writing of the book, my mother and I had a very difficult relationship, and she died quite a few years ago now, maybe 12 or 13. But she's very literary, and I'm very literary. And she was very, well, I'm becoming very like her, I find, as I get older. So, yeah, that's a curious story we could tell stories around a fireplace about. But the thing that I found is I found myself crying for my mother a lot lately. And I'm going, oh, where is this coming from? Because I feel that lineage of the love of literature and the meaning, like she was into the Jane Austen thing, you know, the Jane Austen book club, that's my mum, you know. And so as I turn more and more to Jane Austen and women writers even, I've kind of been missing being able to talk with my mum and my grandma, who's both passed, as my closest women immediate ancestors, where I think because of what the story was in this lifetime precluded us talking as deeply as I wished. So maybe another tip would be to keep hearing the ancestors that are still alive and their stories, because I feel like I do it on another dimensional level, but I kind of have cried wishing I heard more of their stories, and my grandma too, who I was just alike, so alike physically, but she was a very silent and inner person, so we had the bond. But I never really heard all her stories because for her generation we just didn't talk about, like Tash said, the war or the poverty or the father running off with another woman and leaving the Irish 6 kids alone, or we just, we don't talk about that, darling. So not to miss storytelling, we have to make time in our society and amongst women.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, Penny.
Oh, I just want to thank Virginia for actually raising that and Tash too from that different angle, because I actually found myself missing my nan on Friday. My nan's been gone for nearly, here comes the emotion, nearly two decades, and I was very privileged to spend a lot of my life with my nan and pop. And one of my favourite things to do was to sit on the porch of my nan and pop's place in Port Macquarie and listen to Nan, share a cuppa with Nan and listen to Nan as she told me. And often particularly she would tell me over and over again of things from her childhood and her life. And it was the greatest time that I had. And then I found myself on Friday really grateful that she wasn't here to have seen the journey I took. But I found myself really wishing that she was here on Friday so she could see how I restoried and changed the dialogue and what I'm now doing, because I know how proud she'd be. And, I'm so And as an adopted person who didn't think I could go back into generational stuff, which I've only very recently realized I can, it is amazing when it's just amazing. And I'm very grateful for where I've been reminded of that. And you've all reminded me of that today. So yeah, thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge that.
And Penny, yeah, I think your grandmother will and does and can and is hearing and seeing you.
Oh, she is. Absolutely. Yes, thank you.
Nadine, did you want to speak to that?
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh. Yeah, thank you for presencing the ancestors in many ways. I think about my family's lineage, the women, and how much was lost, because of shame, weaving it back to shame and just what wasn't allowed with their generations. My great-grandmother, no one ever knew when she was pregnant until she had the babies. She was a tiny little Irish woman and she wore the coats, there's just so much there. But something, when I was listening to this idea of ancestors and shaming, something that started happening when I was working with younger women, beyond psychotherapy, it was so interesting to me. Several young women began sending me erotic pictures of themselves. Not, I wasn't asking for them, but just sending them. And I was like, what? It felt a little strange to me, not in a shaming way, but I was like, what is this? Because I knew it wasn't, about, it wasn't sexual. But I started to realize this missing piece of being acknowledged for our womanhood and for growing into ourselves as women, as creatrixes, as women who give birth. And I was like, oh my God, that's a whole missing piece for women, where we kind of want to be accepted from the Divine Mother as who we are growing into. Anyway, so I started to realize that in this sharing of our bodies and ourselves, it is so important, because there has been some missing links from our ancestors. And I love, Tarsh, that you reminded us that we can still connect into that. And as we heal it ourselves, just like I'm healing it for myself, these young women are healing it, we heal it for everyone before us and everyone beyond us and the whole collective. It is so important. So for some reason that was just really present for me, the intimacy of sharing our story, whether it's our pictures, our dances, our bodies, it's so important. And also, I'm really aware as a woman, as a secret keeper, a story keeper, some of the work that we've been doing in my sisterhood is holding space for vets. And so, Tarsh, when you were sharing, I was like, yeah, some of the most powerful circles I've been in is holding space for men who've come back from war. And it's men's stories, but also as women, we have the power to integrate those stories. So I really want to hold more circles around that too. Using our magic as weavers into integration. So thank you.
I feel like there's so much tip of the iceberg.
I know.
Especially in relation to women and men, women holding space for the stories of men, there feels like within me that there's something big there, that it's almost been the battle between men and women, in battle, or I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, I'm finding myself unable to put words to things this weekend. But I want to say, Nadine, I think that's a really worthwhile thing to follow and to continue to integrate and provide health.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And that it really speaks to me of safe space, and we're creating, I think, again, in those permissions, we're creating a safe space, or we're creating a tone of safety around being able to be heard, being able to be seen. Even that beautiful idea of women blossoming into their sensuousness, Nadine, and wanting to show you, wanting a mother figure to go, yes, I see you, and I don't shame you, and I don't judge you. And I went out last night and to a gathering, and I do find quite often I move around the room and most of the men want to share a story with me.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I have the capacity to embody myself enough to just move and be held. And it's just a really interesting thing that just organically occurs, but there's not enough safe spaces. There's not enough people that can just listen, just really, really listen and don't have to even offer anything. Although I know in all the work that we do, we all hold space for people that does provide mentorship at times. There's also such a powerful piece to just listening, deeply listening. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So look, we're about to close, but I did want to just to speak to that a little bit myself, and to finish with I was actually drawn to a quote from my own chapter, which I initially was like, can I quote myself? I think I can. To be the scribe of a new story, first we must face the fact we have been accepting our reality on some level. Stop blaming others and recognize where we've given away our power. We must let go of false narratives. Sometimes we need to go as far as intentionally weeding them from the garden of our psyche, dancing them out of our pores, sweating them out of our cells, wringing them from our bones, and burning them on the sacred altar of conscious awakening. And I feel like, the power of really being present to the stories that we're living by, and that this would be my, my offering, and to what happens in the world. And I see this is already happening. We're already, we've got movements where light is being shone into places that have been cloistered and kept kind of locked down for a very long time. And we actually are collectively weeding out the false narratives. We're collectively, weeding out and dancing out and sweating out and burning the non-truths and the things that have kept us silent. And I feel like there's a really big piece around breaking the silence. And particularly, like, you were saying, Virginia, it feels like it's time to turn the volume up, to keep turning the volume up, and to give ourselves permission to take that platform and go, graciously, I have something you really need to hear right now. Yeah. And I guess after we've got kind of, or as well as, clearing the stuff that no longer serves us, clearing the kind of the ways in which we've kept ourselves locked down to be safe, we're also really needing to be providing maps. And I guess our stories in this book are a beautiful collection of maps of the ways in which that we can restore, of the ways in which we can heal ourselves. And that's a beautiful thing. I would say, find someone safe, if that needs to be someone like a mentor or a therapist, or, sometimes you are lucky to find a friend, a circle of friends, but find somewhere safe. Choose your audience, particularly, when you're not quite sure, if you haven't always feel it's safe to speak your truth. Be careful with that. It's preciousness. It's precious. So offer your gems to someone that that you can feel safe with. And I know for myself, it's such a privilege. It's like the biggest privilege of my life when someone comes to me with some of their deep heart and says, here I am, just the tears are coming. But it's just such an amazing thing. So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see more and more of this taking place, and to see more and more people hungry to join the conversations and to start really participating in this whole restoring of our world. Yeah. Thank you so much, dear women. Beautiful. It's been such an incredible discussion with you. And it's just this whole journey actually has been a life-changing and life-enhancing time.
Thank you for leading such a beautiful and powerful conversation.
Yay.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, I think we've got one more round table this afternoon.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
Okay. So
come along. We'll be talking about activating your channel and the psychic arts, tapping into the psychic arts. It's going to be a brilliant conversation with Naomi and Helen, Penny as well, I think. Yes, I think the four of us.
Natalie.
Sorry, Natalie. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yay. Awesome. All right. Can't wait. All right. Thank you. Thanks for everyone for joining, watching us. See you. Bye.
Bye.